Hey, welcome back. I'm Michael Otto, and it's time to review episode 6 of Wandavision.
So you're saying the universe created a sitcom starring two Avengers?
This is a spoiler warning. Now and going forward, you have been warned. This great late 90s, early 2000s style theme song and intro, and I really enjoyed this theme song. Oh my god, Billy's dressed up like Wiccan! Oh my god, it's so cute! So we open on Billy talking about Halloween, and Tommy cuts him off about it. They do a really good job of illustrating sort of the subtle differences in their personalities, with Billy being a Dorkosaurus Rex. But that's not a real dinosaur, you know. And Billy is already in his amazing little costume. I love it. And Tommy is a little more hesitant to get into a costume because he's the cool twin. Billy is also hesitant to wake Pietro when Tommy says he wants to, which, you know what? Billy's apprehension to waking him kind of mirrors Wanda's hesitation with Pietro. But I'm really enjoying the family moment because it's a really cute dynamic. Ah, and here we are, the entrance of the iconic Sokovian fortune teller. Gagged. Slay the house down, girl. No, yeah. Pietro says things to Wanda that is even more meta than everything else we've heard so far. And he says to her stuff like, "You probably suppressed a lot of the trauma," when referring to their Halloween flashback. I really like how they're doing this episode. He's what you call a man-child. But during their subtle disagreement there, Vision in his swanky classic outfit has a disagreement with Wanda, and we cut to Billy narrating further. But when he does, Pietro notices that Billy is talking to us. Like, very, like, beyond meta. So, you know, Pietro is, like, way outside of being caught in Wanda's hex spell. After Vision leaves, after their disagreement, Vision is on his way, and Wanda locks the door, and Pietro jump scares her. Now, I mean, I'm not really sure if we're supposed to read into that or not. It is a Halloween episode after all, but, I mean, we already do all suspect Pietro of something. So, it's probably just, you know, playing its part at that point. And then Pietro and Tommy, Tommy seems to look up to Pietro a lot. Like, that's what they're really doing here. They're making Tommy idolize Pietro. They both run out the door and come back with matching Quicksilver costumes, alluding to, you know, Tommy's speed persona. Outside Westview, we start with the drone being brought in, so we can tell that not much time has passed on the outside since Wanda was outside the barrier with everyone and with Sword. Monica immediately questions Hayward about his decision to attack her, and then Darcy makes a comment to Hayward as well. Obviously, Hayward doesn't like this, as he's, like, the highest guy on Sword right now, and he, like, starts in at her. I really like this exchange, especially when he's asking which one of them is the sassy best friend, considering Kat Dennings' other role as a sassy server on Two Broke Girls. More on that later. After they have a few words, Hayward plays the blip card as an excuse, pinning it on Monica's ignorance that she doesn't realize how hard it is for people who were there the entire time. She calls him a coward for it, and then Hayward further pulls her mother as a card to play, which is a really low move. Like, you can tell this guy's a scumbag, because he used it as a reason to dismiss Monica. And, yeah, if that was a big issue, Monica would have behaved worse. And the fact that he was so desperate to get to that point, clear illustration to everybody there that that's what he was trying to do. I don't know, subordinates, everybody else in the green uniforms, they don't... Yeah. And I was not expecting Jimmy Woo to have some kick-assery in that moment either. Like, that was juicy, and they just went rogue. And what a great moment to swing back into Westview. Okay, so we cut back to the kids are trick-or-treating, but for the first couple of lines, Tommy says, "This is it, game time." But then after the exact moment, this really weird expression on Pietro's face in the background. Like, he could just be making an expression that is fuzzy and looks weird, but it looks like he's going out of his way to make this evil expression behind Tommy. I don't know, but afterward he says, "Unleash hell, demon spawn." I mean, if that's not connected and that's not supposed to be a hint, I don't know what is. Pietro mentioned Shangri-La, and I'm actually going to revisit that later as well on a different thought process. So we move on, and it seems like all of the active characters in the show's like major scripts are representing themselves in their costumes. Wanda's in the Scarlet Witch costume, Vision's in the Vision costume, etc. So we got Herb, who's in a Frankenstein costume, and that's interesting. What if it suggests that Herb is somehow undead? And he also offers to change something for Wanda, which is interesting because Wanda usually is the one to actually make decisions to change stuff. So I find it interesting that Herb asks if she wants something changed. So I don't think it says a lot, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some kind of reveal with Herb sometime in the future. I'm just going to leave it there, though. Of course, we catch up with Vision, and he's not actually on duty for Neighborhood Watch, except for, the double play on words of watching the neighborhood, what he's doing right now. I also want to point out the matter-of-fact 90s background music with the theremin Halloween moment as well. I really appreciate that. It sounds great. This stop-motion ad, it's really great. It feels super nostalgic to me because I grew up in the 90s and early 2000s, so this is straight out of actual TV advertisements almost. Except for it's really creepy, and I would never want to actually see this ad on TV. I'm going to read into it in a lot of different ways, but the only one I'm going to actually mention is I think this is more of an allegory for Vision. Like, the kid on the island is more Vision than it is Wanda. A lot of people have been talking about how the child is actually Wanda, and I'm like, I get that. I see that this ad can actually have many different interpretations, but I like to look at it as this is Vision feeding off of Wanda's magic, and, I don't know. After the ad, we get back to Pietro, and he literally describes what his purpose is in the show to Wanda, especially the part where he needs to give her grief, which is on top of it being even more meta. He is super aware of what he's supposed to do in the show. When we get back to Vision and he investigates the car off to the side, well, first we see that a lot of these people are frozen. Like, they don't really... There's the one bit in the neighborhood where they can move like a GIF, and then we got this other bit here where they're kind of stuck, just not moving at all. But then he comes across Agnes in the same vicinity, these people that are just not moving, and Agnes does still have the ability to partly function, and that could either be, her significance as one of the more major characters, or her significance and role that she's playing in Wanda's reality, aside from the character that she's playing. She should be frozen too, but she can respond, and then Vision unlocks her, and then she still acts really weird. Agnes still behaves oddly when she's outside of it. You can sympathize with her like any other person in the town when she's like, "Am I dead? Like, are you here to save us?" But then she goes and starts cackling in a really creepy way. So it's kind of like, I feel like she's already super aware of what's happening besides knowing where you're at. You know what I mean? After Vision's interaction with Agnes, he decides to head toward the barrier past Ellis Avenue. Back at Town Square, Wanda and Pietro are having kind of a twin heart-to-heart, and Pietro says, "There's no need to traumatize me about what Wanda did with all the children." He says, "You are always the empathetic twin." Well, I'm assuming that the answer we got by him saying, "Oh, were they just sleeping in their beds?" That probably is our answer, because otherwise we really don't even know what happened to these children. Westview must have had children originally. We get back to Vision breaking through the barrier. This scene was... I saw 3 images of this a week ago, and I was just so anxious about what was going to happen here, and it kind of is happening. Like, this is what I thought was going to happen. He was going to basically die when he comes out. But I didn't expect it to happen slowly. We didn't see the Hex trying to pull him back in. We didn't know he was going to struggle to get out and be kind of caught in between. So I'm glad that there was a way to prevent him from dying immediately, but it was still very difficult to watch that. Like, it's like watching him get dusted in slow motion, and it was how many times is Vision going to die, or nearly die, or whatever? Like, it's just like, I get it, only Doctor Strange dies more than Vision. Oh yeah, and I really want to see those two on screen together, just saying. So anyway, he's dying outside, and so on the inside, Tommy's running around with his super speed, and Billy starts hearing his father's cries of pain. He's kind of dying, so he unlocks his powers, and then he also stops Tommy from moving with his little blue energy, which is really cool to see. And he runs over, and once he gets Wanda's attention, he concentrates and figures out what's going on with Vision, and then Wanda just like full on stops time everywhere inside of Westview. Crazy. And then she like bursts into the Hex herself, like astral projects into this Hex, and then starts to expand the Hex, which, gosh, I wish I would have been able to predict that the Hex could have expanded, or that sword would have been brought into the Hex. Like, this whole end sequence was really cool. First of all, Darcy is like handcuffed to this car, so she gets sucked in. I really enjoy the moment that Darcy gets integrated into the Hex here, because both visually it's striking. I love seeing her disintegrate. It reminds me of the barrier in the Mario Brothers movie. And as well, it also makes me theorize, who's she going to be now? Is she suddenly going to end up a character in Westview? And I'm like trying to imagine who she's going to be. And, I mentioned earlier, she played on Two Broke Girls. I think would be a really awesome meta reference if we're going into the common 2000s era of TV shows, and then Darcy ends up as this sassy server in a cafe or a restaurant somewhere in Westview. Anyway, so yeah, I wish I could have predicted that the sword base was going to get sucked in, because this plot, this show, everything is just going crazy. And, when other things go crazy, you might as well expect the circus to come to town. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is just a highly of course the circus is the sword base gets turned into a circus. Like, it's perfect. It makes perfect sense. I brought up Shangri-La earlier when Pietro mentioned it. And I've also previously mentioned a theory that I haven't completely figured out, which is that the hexed space that Wanda created has something to do with Vision specifically, or the Mind Stone, and they're doing something to rebuild, reconstruct, or restore Vision somehow from the inside. And so far, I'm still going to hold on to this theory, because, like, first of all, mentioning Shangri-La is a reason for me to consider it further, because it already is an aspect of Marvel lore, being a place that Vision rules over after discovering eternal life. So I find that fascinating, first of all, that he's able to live inside the Hex, but then also the Hex seems to be based on the whole hexagram thing, and when Vision was falling apart, all of the pieces falling off of him back into the Hex were hexagons. So, and then another thing is, when this whole Hex thing started, it started with a 50s sitcom, or like the very early broadcasting technology, and everything kept progressing and learning and figuring things out more technologically based and all that. So I think where this is a crossover between sort of like technology and magic, I feel like the Hex existence is sort of a product of Vision or the Mind Stone and Wanda. Sort of like this entire environment is a way that Vision exists, as well as a cradle, so to speak, for him to rebuild and or make the twins. In this theory, I'm discounting the idea that Mephisto is playing a part here or something. But I feel like if nobody else did help Wanda create the reality, then her and Vision could have made it, and that would effectively make Vision actually the father of the twins, because it's kind of like the twins were birthed inside the space that is Vision. Does that make sense? But I don't know. We still have to wait and see who this other being is that may have coerced or helped Wanda or made a deal with Wanda or whatever. We still need to uncover who that is, and if they're not playing a part, then I guess we can still consider this theory. Oh my god. Oh my god, that was great. That was so great. Well, I think that's probably my favorite episode so far in the season. I hope you enjoyed it just as much as I did, and thanks so much for listening to my review. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and please do come back for next week's episode 7 of Wandavision review. I'm Mike Collado. Have a great week, and goodbye.